Forget Bassett or Giolito. Who the Braves really need to sign is Jordan Montgomery or Evan Phillips. Let's talk about why. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, your daily source for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com to get started. You know, we've been talking the last couple, yesterday, but last couple weeks, really, it feels like, about how Atlanta has a lot of options for the final spot in the rotation, right? Is it Hurston Waldrop? Going by performance, it probably should be. Does he get optioned to AAA to save depth and they go with Bryce Elder or Grant Holmes or somehow Joey Wentz or something? A lot of options for that final spot. And how whoever doesn't get it has to go to the bullpen because you've got so many options there. And that was part of the reason why I argued on Monday, don't go sign Chris Bassett for $15 million, because all it means is you're going to end up having to lose another depth option. But I've got a different idea. Rather than signing a major league established starter for the rotation on opening day and having to find another place to stick another out of options guy, sign somebody that's injured. Jordan Montgomery, the starter, or Evan Phillips, the reliever. Let's talk about both guys, when they're expected to come back, and why these signings would make a ton of sense for the Atlanta Braves. And we can start off with Jordan Montgomery. Because, understand here, we talked about AA wants an impact starter, right? And the definition we're assuming he has of that is a guy that's good enough to bump a bunch of guys into lesser roles, right? He could step in as a postseason caliber starter, and he is pitching one of the first couple games of a postseason series. And unless you go out and you get Framber Valdez, which is, his market's strangely quiet, unless you go out and get Framber Valdez, there's just not a lot of guys like that on the market right now. But if you think about it, adding a guy right now, adding a Chris Bassett or a Lucas Giolito or a Nick Martin, whoever it might be, right? A Justin Verlander, whatever. You don't need their innings now. You don't need their innings in April. You have plenty of guys who can cover innings when the season starts. Again, you just broke it down. If you assume that your top four are Chris Sale, Spencer Schwellenbach, Spencer Strider, Ronaldo Lopez in some order, and everything we've heard from the team is that those four guys are going to be your four starters. And then you have a ton of options for who can give you innings as the number 5, right? Bryce Elder, Hurston Waldrop, Grant Holmes, all those guys. And you're going to have most of them on the roster when April starts. A couple of them are going to be crammed in the pen, but you're going to have most of them. But here's the thing. Even if you ignore last year and all of the injuries you had, it's still common for the Braves to lose one or two guys for a significant portion of the season, right? Think about 2024. You didn't have Spencer Strider for almost the entire season, and you lost Ronaldo Lopez for a big part of the second half. Think about 2023. Max Fried was on the 60-day IL. That's the only season going back to when he first got in the rotation on a regular basis in 2019 that he didn't make at least 28, 29 starts. He only made 14 starts in 2023. You can go back, as you keep going back, it's easy to assume somebody in your rotation, at least one core guy, is going to miss multiple months. And then you're going to have other guys get banged up or need a 15-day IL stint or need a month or whatever. You're more than likely going to have a bunch of depth when you start the season. But when you get into June or July, that's when you need to be able to put a starter in the rotation. That's when getting another arm available would make a ton of sense. I don't know if we all kind of have looked at the schedule and kind of realized some of this stuff. Coming out of the All-Star break, Atlanta has a game every single day from Friday, July 17th through Sunday, August 2nd. 17 games in 17 days coming out of the All-Star break. Yes, you're going to get a break in the All-Star break. You'll have a couple days off unless you're selected for the game. But that's the time when you need to have additional starters ready. And yes, you're going to have some prospects. You're going to have a J.R. Ritchie. We think you're going to have a Blake Burkhalter. I gave all of those ETAs in a show last week. But being able to take a Jordan Montgomery and activate him and throw him in the rotation would make a ton of sense. So, I know he was bad. We have to acknowledge, Jordan Montgomery for the Arizona Diamondbacks in 2024 was not a good pitcher. He signed at the very end of spring training, and he put up a 6.23 ERA in 117 innings. Now, a little bit of bad luck here. Field and independent pitching was a 4.48. But the 3-season stretch before that, 2021, 2022, and 2023, when 23 had that terrible offensive environment, or that amazing offensive environment for everybody, those juice baseballs, he had a 3.48 ERA and a 3.62 FIP across those 3 seasons. He threw 524 innings. It was 157, 178, and 188 in the 3 seasons before he signed that free agent deal. So he was and it was all earned. Again, the Philly independent pitching was right there in line with what he did. 3.48 ERA, 3.62 FIP. It was earned production. That is a guy where you are not afraid to throw him into Game 3 of a postseason series. You'd like to have a better option, but you don't hate having to throw a guy with a 3.48 ERA into Game 3 of a postseason series. He had a complete game shutout in that stretch. I mean, good pitcher. He has the terrible year in 24, and then he blows out and needs Tommy John. Thankfully, he had picked up his player option, right? $22.5 million for 2025. Picked up his player option, but he has surgery. He uses Dr. Keith Meister in Dallas. Those of you who think about these kind of things will remember that's who Atlanta uses for all of their Tommy John surgeries. That's the same physician that Atlanta uses. And because he had the surgery in March of 2025, the expectation, the understanding is that he's probably going to come back in July. Being able to come out of the All-Star break and have an additional starter in Jordan Montgomery would be very useful. He's got a 5-pitch mix. He throws he bases everything, the sinker, the changeup, and a curveball. He's thrown 4-seamers, he's thrown cutters, he's thrown sliders. It's a 6-pitch mix, I'm sorry. So Jeremy Hefner's going to love that. And he would give you another lefty for your rotation. Because the Braves have right now, Chris Sale is just about it. If Joey Wentz makes a start or Jose Suarez makes a start, you'll get another lefty. But right now, your only lefty is Chris Sale. If you were to add Jordan Montgomery later in the season, he would give you a second lefty in your rotation. And here's the really good thing. Here's the thing that I like about this. Is I talked about when he's been healthy, he's been a number 3 caliber starter. But you don't need him to be that. You can back off the starters, and the goal of Jordan Montgomery is to keep Spencer Schwellenbach from hitting 190 innings in the regular season, right? The goal is to keep Chris Sale from trying to do too much in July and August so you can push him in October. The goal is to keep Spencer Strider from feeling like he has to carry the rotation through the summer because they're worried about the workload on Ronaldo Lopez, right? Jordan Montgomery can give you rotation insurance. And the more that the innings pile up on the other starters, the more valuable he gets. The deal is probably a 1+1. It's probably a smaller base salary in 26, and then a club option for a larger base salary in 27 that you can pick up if he pitches well. And maybe it jumps all the way to like that $22 million, that Atlanta max. But this is something where he also has some bullpen experience from when he was in Arizona, that poor year. And so if he's not all the way back, you can still put him in the bullpen, or if he has a club option, you can trade him to a team that needs pitching in 27. There's a lot of different options here. Jordan Montgomery would protect the rotation from itself, right? You wouldn't need to count on Chris Sale or Spencer Strider coming to the coaching staff and asking to skip a start because they're fatigued. Because guess what? Spencer Strider's not going to do that. Chris Sale's not going to do that. But if you can add an extra starter, a proven major league guy who's coming back from injury, second half of the season, that can go a long way towards letting you back off of those postseason guys a little bit in the heat of the Atlanta summer and get them to October. In just a minute, the argument for Evan Phillips is a completely different argument than what you're trying to do with Jordan Montgomery. Let's break that down next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Fantrax. If you play fantasy baseball, dynasty, redraft, whatever, Fantrax is the absolute best option out there. My home dynasty league is on Fantrax, and I think it's fantastic. They have the deepest player pool, any player that you literally ever will hear of, including guys who aren't signed with MLB yet. They have Japanese players. Carter Stewart, Atlanta's former first-round pick that went to Japan when they discovered an injury and cut his bonus offer. He is going to be a free agent for the 2027 season. He is in the player pool on Fantrax. If your dynasty league allows, it's called Open Universe, you can claim players from anywhere, you can go ahead and add him to your roster now in case he comes over after this season. If you have your lineup set and one of your starters gets scratched from the game, or you have a guy in a starting spot that's not starting that day, the app will send you a notification to your phone that you need to adjust your lineup. Or same thing, if you have a starter on the bench and you wanted to put that starting pitcher in for the day, it will send you a notification and make sure that you know. The app is great. The customization options for your commissioner are great. You can set up anything. Minor league spots. You can do a Rule 5 draft through there. Everything. It's fantastic. Go to Fantrax, Fantrax.com/Braves today to sign up for your fantasy league today. Fantrax.com/Braves today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. Again, the argument for Jordan Montgomery, he helps you save your rotation from itself. He gives you innings in the second half, so you get the postseason guys to October. The argument for Evan Phillips, the former reliever of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and, fun fact, a former Braves draft pick, another guy that got away. Atlanta took him in the 17th round in 2015. And then they traded him to the Baltimore Orioles in the Kevin Gausman and Darren O'Day deal in 2018. They released him. He signed with Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay waived him, and the Dodgers grabbed him. Of course. And the only thing that Evan Phillips has done since he's been in LA is be a fantastic reliever. Across 5 seasons with the Dodgers, 2.22 ERA, in 195 innings with 45 saves, 221 strikeouts. In the postseason, he's been almost untouchable. 12 games, 15 and a third innings, 0 runs allowed. He struck out 21 in 15 and a third innings. He's also down with Tommy John. His surgery was a little bit later in the year, right? But the goal for getting Evan Phillips, who was non-tendered by LA, they just said, we're not going to offer you a contract while you're rehabbing from Tommy John. We don't need you. He's having to pay for it himself now, I think. The goal of getting Evan Phillips is not to have him for August. The goal of getting Evan Phillips is to have him for October. Again, he's been very good in his career. Regular season, righties, 165, 225, 247 line. Lefties, not much better, 214, 272, 349. Really not much better there. Lefties don't hit him that well. Righties don't hit him that well. He has a sweeper that is one of the best sweepers in baseball. Pitching Ninja called it a frisbee sweeper. But his pitching arsenal, it is honestly the kind of thing that makes you drool. It is that wickedly awesome sweeper and 3 different fastballs, all in the mid to upper 90s, and that's it. He doesn't have time for changeups. He doesn't have time for curveballs. It is a sweeper, and it is heat. And if you think about the idea here, the basic concept, sign Evan Phillips to a deal now. He's from North Carolina. Again, Atlanta drafted him in 2015 and traded him to the Orioles, who let him walk away. They just let him go. The idea here is, what does every single contending team look for at the deadline? They look for relievers. Every team is looking to reinforce their bullpen at the deadline, every contender for the stretch run. Evan Phillips is going to come back sometime after the All-Star break. We don't know if it's July. We don't know if it's August. It could be early September. But again, you don't need him for that. You need him for October. Because we're really excited about the contents of Atlanta's bullpen. The pieces in Atlanta's bullpen are exciting. Raisel Iglesias is back. You got Robert Suarez, Dylan Lee, Tyler Kinley. I think Grant Holmes can take a high leverage role. Joel Payamps. The stuff looked as good as it's been, and the Braves are high on him being able to get back to his dominant Milwaukee form. But if you think about it, there's a lot of questions with this bullpen as well. Raisel Iglesias, he watched his fastball velocity drop by almost a full mile an hour last year. He'll pitch this season at the age of 36, which is young for life. It is old for baseball. Robert Suarez is Raisel Iglesias, but a little bit younger. He's turning 35, and he doesn't have the slider. He's a changeup dominant guy with some fastballs. Great velocity. He's hitting almost 100, but he doesn't have a reliable breaking ball to fall back on. He's not throwing a slider. Raisel's was bad last year. Suarez doesn't have one at all. Dylan Lee had one of the longer seasons of his career last year. I think he threw almost 70 innings. And late in the year, it kind of looked like he was feeling those innings. He was Atlanta's heaviest used reliever, and he started to have homer issues second half of the year. Some of that's just small sample size stuff, but there's a question. Joe Jimenez. We don't know if we will ever see Joe Jimenez pitch in Atlanta again. It's the final year of his deal. He missed all of last year. He had a cleanup on the knee issue. We genuinely don't know if we will see Joe Jimenez again. We just don't know his status. With the acknowledgement that you could potentially see AJ Smith-Shawver down the stretch, if he's not back until August or September, they may just have him be a reliever. But you can see how there is a realistic scenario where you would need to add a relief pitcher, at least one, at the deadline. And I didn't even mention, what if one of these guys gets hurt? This was just talking about, even if they play, there's warning signs. We didn't even talk about if you lose a guy. Because again, 2024, you lost a ton of position players. 2025, you lost a bunch of starters. Is 2026 going to be your bullpen? I don't know. So you can see the argument for sign Evan Phillips and tell him, hey, don't rush back. We got to make sure you're good. He did not use Dr. Keith Meister. The Dodgers used Dr. Neil Trachet, who is in LA. Makes a ton of sense. That's who did Ronald's knee surgeries, by the way. We do have a relationship with that doctor. But we use somebody else for our Tommy Johns. So you probably have to catch up a little bit with where he is in the rehab process. But you can see the argument here too, right? You can see how it makes a little bit of sense to grab either one of these guys. You can put them on the 60-day IL as soon as you need a 40-man spot. Let's talk about the logistics here, right? Let's talk about how all of this stuff works, how you'd get them on the roster, and all of that. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Grand Slam Getaways. Love this concept. Bucket list baseball bus trips for fans who love the game of baseball and want to travel in style and comfort. All of these trips depart from Atlanta. May is going to Florida, June's to the Midwest, July is to the Northeast. They all have some kind of side trip, right? Louisville Slugger Museum, the filming locations for Bull Durham. I think the Florida trip has a beach day scheduled in there, right? There's at least 2 Braves road games, plus other games with other teams and other ballparks, right? You want to go see PNC Park? It's a gorgeous baseball field in Pittsburgh. You can get that. Yankee Stadium's on the Northeast trip, all that kind of stuff. There's appearances by former MLB players, giveaways. You get field level tickets to all of these games. You stay in 3-star hotels. Breakfast is provided every single day. It's a great vacation if you're a parent and a kid wanting to make a memory, if you're retired and just want to follow your baseball team around a little bit, if you're just a baseball fan and this is your summer vacation. Great and stress-free way to hit the road with your fellow fans. So reserve your spot now with a small deposit. It's grandslam-getaways.com to make this summer a Grand Slam. Again, grandslam-getaways.com to let the baseball adventure begin. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk about the logistics of how this works. Because the argument against adding a healthy, ready-to-go starter right now is the fact that you have to make a 40-man spot for that guy, and you have to make a 26-man roster spot. So somebody else that's out of options, Joey Wentz, Jose Suarez, who you've already lost on waivers once this winter, Grant Holmes, Bryce Elder, like every time you add somebody, a player from that group of guys is gone. And if any of your auditioning guys, your Ian Hamilton, your James Karinchak, any of those guys, if they project to make the opening day roster, you lose another one of your out of options players. But the good thing about adding either Phillips or Montgomery is right now, all you need is one 40-man spot. And there are options. There are guys you can get rid of off of the 40-man. Every team has guys, depth guys down in the system who are, fringe like Hunter Stratton. That may be a guy that Atlanta decides, hey, we can afford to try to pass him through waivers and see if we need him or not. He pitched 19 innings for Atlanta last year, 16 strikeouts and a 5.21 ERA. He has 2 options left. I don't necessarily want to just give away Hunter Stratton. But here's the thing. When you bring one of these guys onto the 40-man roster via signing, as soon as pitchers and catchers report, if your 40-man roster is full and you need a spot, you can move them to the 60-day IL and make a spot. Now, the way that MLB's rules are structured, you have to have a course, like you need to have a full 40-man roster and you need to have a corresponding move, right? You don't do it just to do it, right? You do it, that's how you're making space. So let's say, for instance, Hunter Stratton, you DFA him or whatever, and then Baltimore claims him because they've claimed your other guys this winter. Baltimore claims him. And then a week later, they DFA him. You can grab Hunter Stratton again. And to make him a 40-man spot, you can take the guy that you signed, Evan Phillips or Jordan Montgomery, move them to the 60-day IL, and make a spot for Stratton. Now, the peculiar thing here about the way MLB does this, you can put them on the 60-day IL as soon as players are reporting officially on that report date next Monday. The 60 days does not begin counting until opening day. So no matter if you put them on the 60-day IL in February, in early March, or the day before opening day, their 60 days begins on opening day. But all you need is a 40-man spot to sign one of these guys. And technically, once you sign one, you can then sign the other and put the first one on the 60-day IL to make a spot, right? Like, you just need one spot to sign both guys if you want to. And when it's time to bring them off the 60-day IL, when it's time to activate them and put them on the 26-man roster, you will have to make a spot on the 40-man. But at that point, mid-season, we're in July, we're in August, maybe September for Phillips, who knows? It's almost a certainty that somebody will have gotten hurt and not be coming back, and you can move them to the 60-day IL to make a spot. The logistics make a ton of sense here. Because again, you don't need the help in April. You have a lot of options to take innings in April. You need the help in July. You need the help in August in your rotation, in September in your rotation. And in the bullpen, you need the help down the stretch. You need them in September and October, and hopefully the first day of November. Hopefully you're playing in the World Series and we're not done until November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, whenever Game 7 is, right? There are other players out there that you can claim as well. One of the guys who was very briefly a Brave this winter was center fielder Michael Ciani, former St. Louis Cardinal. He had been picked by the Reds. Started the offseason as a Cardinal. They waived him. We picked him up. He went from us to the Dodgers, to the Yankees, back to the Dodgers. When they claimed him on Tuesday, they designated Andy Ibanez for assignment. Andy Ibanez is making $1.2 million. They signed him earlier in the offseason for $1.2 million. 32 years old. He's an infielder. It's been like 3 weeks since they signed him, but they're banking on the fact, hey, we don't care if he costs $1.2 million. Other teams aren't going to want to pay $1.2 million for Andy Ibanez. So if we DFA him, nobody's going to pick him up. We can just pay his salary to put him in AAA. But here's why I'm interested. We talked about Mauricio Dubon as the everyday shortstop. And Mike Yastrzemski is really good against righties. Mauricio Dubon was pretty decent against lefties. Okay? And so if Ha-Seong Kim had been healthy, you had the ability to do like a Mike Yastrzemski and Mauricio Dubon platoon, one against righties, one against lefties. Well, now Dubon's in the lineup every day. Guess what? Andy Ibanez has spent parts of 5 major league seasons in the majors. He's a .280 hitter with an OPS in the 800s against left-handed pitching. He can play first, he can play second, he can play third, he can play left field. And so, like, honestly, while you hate to pop another $1.2 million, you just gave Jorge Mateo $1 million after the Kim injury. But if you think about Atlanta's options for that final bench spot, you've got whoever your backup catcher is, Chadwick, Tropper, Sandy Leon. You've got Jorge Mateo as your backup shortstop. You've got Eli White as your backup outfielder, right? Your 5th outfielder in this case. Who's that last guy? Is it Nacho Alvarez? Because it makes more sense to give him everyday playing time in Gwinnett. It's his final option year. Give him everyday playing time in Gwinnett. Make him play second base so that you know if he could possibly be Ozzie Albies' replacement. You can take a 32-year-old Andy Ibanez $1.2 million bucks in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of money. Atlanta signed up to pay, if I remember right, they were paying Luis Guillorme more than that to be the last man on the bench 2 seasons ago. 24, I think. Grab Andy Ibanez. You do have to make a 40-man spot for him. So maybe it's Hunter Stratton. Maybe it's Jose Suarez again. Maybe if you wait before, like, for the waiver process and the 48-hour waiting period, maybe pitchers and catchers have reported by then, and you can slap A.J. Smith-Shawver on the 60-day IL and not lose a player to grab Ibanez. But grab him. He gives you a guy, again, he can play first, he can play second, he can play third, he can play left. You have options all across your infield. You have a guy who can at least give you decent contact ability against lefties. And short term can be a platoon bat with Mike Yastrzemski for left field. You can play him if something happens to Ozzie. You can play him at second base. Gives you a lot of flexibility. Makes a ton of sense. And then, if you want, go sign Evan Phillips or Jordan Montgomery for the rest of the season. This has been Braves Today for Wednesday, February 4th. Stay tuned. Those of you who watch to the very end, special surprise tomorrow. We've got a guest coming to talk prospects. Those of you who pay attention to Braves prospects will know who this is. You will be very excited about this. In the meantime, do me a favor. You're listening on audio. A 5-star review would be fantastic. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when we go live, we drop the next episode, all that good stuff. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.